It was the kind of summer evening that made everything seem alive. The warm hues of the setting sun stretched across the neighborhood, painting the world in amber and gold. Elliot sat cross-legged on his bed, half-heartedly flipping through the pages of a book he wasn't really reading. His attention was glued to the scene outside his window, the arrival of the new family moving into the house next door. Elliot had been curious ever since the for sale sign came down. The house had been empty for months, and now, finally, a moving truck stood parked in the driveway. Boxes were being unloaded, furniture shifted around, and voices echoed in the evening air. And then Elliot saw him. The boy stepped out of the front door, carrying a box with ease as if it weighed nothing. His sun-kissed skin gleamed in the evening light, his messy brown hair curling just slightly at the edges. He was taller than Elliot, lean but strong, and wore a loose white t-shirt that clung to his chest in the summer heat. Elliot couldn't take his eyes off him. Jackson. That was the name Elliot heard one of the movers call out. Elliot's breath hitched as Jackson turned and caught him staring. For a split second, their eyes met. Elliot panicked, quickly snapping the book shut and pretending to be engrossed in it, even though his heart was racing. Jackson didn't look away. Instead, he smirked. It wasn't an unkind smirk, more like he was amused, intrigued even. He set the box down and leaned casually against the truck, as if he had all the time in the world. Elliot dared another glance and immediately regretted it. Jackson was still looking at him, and this time he raised an eyebrow in acknowledgement. Elliot's cheeks flushed a deep red. He wanted to melt into the floor. What was wrong with him? He wasn't used to being so obvious, but something about Jackson had disarmed him completely. That night, Elliot couldn't stop thinking about him. He lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. The way Jackson had smirked at him, the way he'd looked so effortlessly cool, it was maddening. Elliot hated how easily he had been affected, but at the same time, he couldn't deny how alive it made him feel. The next day, Elliot found himself glued to the window again. He watched as Jackson moved around the yard, helping his dad set up patio furniture. He watched as Jackson played with a basketball in the driveway, his movements fluid and confident. At one point, Jackson caught him watching again. This time, he didn't just smirk, he waved. Elliot froze. His first instinct was to duck out of sight, but it was too late. Jackson had seen him, and now he was walking toward the fence that separated their yards. "Hey!" Jackson called out, his voice warm and friendly. Elliot hesitated, then cracked open the window. "Hi!" he replied, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "You've been spying on me." Elliot's face burned. "I wasn't spying," Jackson chuckled, leaning his elbows on the fence. Up close, he was even more intimidatingly good-looking. His eyes were a bright, teasing blue, and his smile was effortlessly charming. "Relax. I'm just messing with you," Jackson said. "I'm Jackson, by the way." "I'm Elliot," he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. "Nice to meet you, Elliot. So, what's there to do around here?" Elliot shrugged, still feeling awkward. "Not much. It's a pretty quiet neighborhood." Jackson tilted his head, studying him. "Well, maybe you can show me around sometime." "I could use a guide." Elliot blinked, surprised. "You want me to show you around?" "Why not?" Jackson replied with a grin. "Unless you're too busy spying on me from your window." Elliot couldn't help but laugh, even as his cheeks turned crimson. There was something about Jackson's easy confidence that put him at ease, even if it also made him incredibly nervous. Over the next few days, they started spending more time together. Jackson would call out to Elliot from the yard, inviting him to shoot hoops or just hang out. Elliot, hesitant at first, found himself looking forward to Jackson's company. Jackson was everything Elliot wasn't: bold, outgoing, and effortlessly charismatic. But he never made Elliot feel small or insignificant. Instead, he seemed to genuinely enjoy Elliot's quiet presence, often teasing him just enough to make him blush. One evening, as they sat on the steps of Jackson's porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jackson turned to Elliot with a curious look. "Why do you always blush so much?" he asked, his tone light but laced with genuine curiosity. Elliot fidgeted, unsure how to respond. "I don't know. I guess I'm just not used to this kind of attention." Jackson leaned back, resting his hands on the steps behind him. "Well, get used to it. You're kind of fun to mess with." Elliot rolled his eyes, but he couldn't hide his smile. Being around Jackson was like stepping into a different world, a world where he felt seen, even if it terrified him. That night, as Elliot lay in bed, he stared out the window at the faint light glowing from Jackson's room. A small smile tugged at his lips. This summer was going to be different.